This short documentary series on the humanities in Europe today, which starts from Europe but will expand to cover, I hope, the whole world, is the initiative of the European network of humanities centers and institutes. We decided collectively with our colleagues that it would be a good idea to present a series of portraits of leading figures in the humanities in our part of the world, and to use them as sources of inspirations, as role models, if you wish, for practitioners and students alike. The portraits of these very sort of charismatic, highly accomplished, distinguished professionals accomplishes another aim. It allows us to trace a genealogical sort of portrait of where the humanities have been, where they are at today, and where they could go, insofar as each person that we interview is asked to trace their own itinerary, past, present, and future. And simply by asking a question like, what was your faculty called when you studied as an undergraduate? And noticing the semantic, the institutional, the political transformations that the field has gone through. Just by doing that, I think the viewers should be in a position to measure the extent of the changes and the extent of the vitality of the field. The hope of this mini-series is indeed that we can collectively, as practitioners but also as spectators, express our love for, our trust in, our respect for this amazing field of the humanities at a time in its history when it is coming under attack in the press, in the public debate, in policy making and financial decisions that are really penalizing this field. The humanities in the 21st century, as you will see in the different portraits of these great figures we're offering to you, are a vital, vibrant, critical, creative, extremely accountable field, proud of its history, confident of its place in the world, and very hopeful for the future. We really hope that you will enjoy watching these great figures, and maybe you will be yourself tempted to run out and interview somebody that you know in your own neighborhood, in your own circles, because the humanities are everywhere and for everybody.
Who am I? I consider myself a humanities scholar, and I'm doing research within the humanities, but particularly within media studies. Originally, that wasn't the first choice. I grew up in a very small town, and my major goal in this small town in south of Germany, close to Tübingen, but not quite yet Tübingen, the famous city of academics, I had only one goal, that was to get away. So if people would ask me back then, what are you going to do when you grow up? I would always answer, go away. And my choice for a city was actually pretty simple. I knew I had to do something within the Faculty of Humanities because I was really bad at math. I scored never well at physics, chemistry, and the other science subjects, but was always interested in history, literature, German language, and what we consider more humanities subjects. So my choice was a city with more than 1 million inhabitants. That was the primary choice of city. And as my high school diploma was not well enough to attend to Berlin, to the theater studies faculty where I wanted to attend, because I had not an A+, I swapped an enrollment at the University of Leipzig for Vienna, and ended up enrolling in Vienna at the Faculty of Humanities, to be precise at the Department for Theatre, Film and Media Studies. And as a secondary subject, I chose Communication Studies. The faculty changed. It was first Geisteswissenschaftliche Fakultät and became later Fakultät der Geistes- und Sozialwissenschaften. I started in 1996 in Vienna, and theatre studies was really my particular interest because I thought I could study anything within the humanities. And I have to say, after a very boring, sometimes painful career in several high schools, I thought from day one at university, this is really home. It felt good, I felt comfortable, I got lost in a tremendous amount of interesting subjects to explore, the great conversations you could have, the many ideas to develop and so forth. And theatre was at my heart because theatre deals with the abyss of human psyche. And I was very romantically interested in how do we live together, why is there hatred in the world, how do we think about each other, and how is it represented in media. Now, I wouldn't know that explicitly at the time when I started it, but that interest was what was driving me, and you would find it all in theatre plays, and the theatre as a podium, literally, that would present such social topics for public discussion was something that intrigued me very much. But it had a catch, all of that. I was one of 3 siblings that would go to university more or less at the same time, and my parents' money would carry for 1 child only. So from day one I had to support myself and finance my studies. And there's not that much money to make in theatre. So I attended, I answered to a job vacancy at a company. I had no idea what it was. It was Cisco Systems in 1996. And it turned out to be the market leader in network technology. And all of a sudden, I was immersed in the new market and the new economy, and noticed there is some social change going on that is really interesting me. And that drew me away from my interest into theatre. I have to say my relation to media is even more, is very complicated. I grew up in a household that would believe in the spoken and the written word only. So my father, as a minister, was very much opposed to commercial media. So we wouldn't read Donald Duck. Actually, Donald Duck was censored at our household. We had no television set, but he would give us access to all the written books in the world. So there was never a limit on the books we wanted to buy. We would never exit a bookshop without having new books. There was not even a censorship on books in the house. We could access from Erotica Universalis to the Bible. We could access all kind of books. Sometimes that had really severe consequences. I think I was around 7 when I found a book on the Holocaust with very graphic images. And when going onto the streets later to play with my comrades, I noticed I was the only one who had seen these horrible images and wanted to talk about them. So there was no one else who wanted to talk about them. And I think it was that time when I developed this interest in being rather at home in my father's library and sorting things out and immersing myself into a thorough reading rather than doing sports or relating with others. In a way, I think that my sister, who benefited from the exact same education, went into marketing and fills TV with the worst commercials you can think of. And I went into media studies because I was really interested in media. I was glued to the TV. I knew that when I came to Utrecht for an Erasmus year during my studies, and I came here only because this was the very first university in Europe that provided a new media studies program for the humanities, and I came here and I finished all the new media courses within half a year. So I got a bit bored and I thought, they are strong on early film here. And I had to do some catching up. And I remember we don't have that facility anymore, but I was sitting at the Kromme Gracht 80, where you could sit in a room with various television sets. They were in front of the students, and I would take 2 always, because all these early films, I thought, they are a bit slow. And I would put in 2 VHS discs and put them even a bit faster, so I could see more movies in less time. And I did some catching up. I think I watched hundreds of movies there, yes. I studied in Vienna from 96 to 99, and in 99 I was already so much focused on this development with the World Wide Web that I was actively looking for a program that would help me to investigate from a more analytical point of view what is happening here. And it was actually challenged through a conversation with one of my key account managers in Cisco Systems. I said, this is not e-commerce. You think the World Wide Web is e-commerce? And he said, yes, of course it is. What else would it be? And I said, no, it is social change. It is a cultural transformation. Something is happening here that we haven't seen before. And he said, yeah, of course, I can sell stuff through the internet. That is happening. And I knew I had to prove there's more to it. And I was looking for a program. This was the only one. So in '99, I went over to the Netherlands to follow these courses and to specialize myself more in a new subject, in a new field of research. Currently, I'm an assistant professor for new media and digital culture at an institute that carries the title Media and Culture Studies. 10 years ago, it was called awkwardly Institute for Media and Re/Presentation, and has changed its name to a more coherent programmatic title as Media and Culture Studies. But it has a strong tradition on cultural studies and media hermeneutics. We have a strong gender studies program. We have a tradition of praising ourselves to be very critical and thinking critical of the hegemon. Within that dispositive, to call it like that, I think I'm a little bit the awkward one out, and developed, together with my students, an interest in the narrative of what I call datafication. So instead of looking at media, I tried to look at data the way we looked at media. I consider this just a new form of mediatization. And I think that we have to expand our corpus of scholarly investigation towards data sets, what we call data, what we call big data, this big complex that is a label, a hype, and a promotion machinery. I'm looking at data as a cultural and a social construct. That is what I'm interested in. I'm not a data scientist, but I notice I have to change my attitude towards these new technologies. For one, that was something that was not too difficult for me. As a theater study student, I developed an interest in the World Wide Web and computer technology. And I noticed that in technology, as much as in films or the theater, the cultural and political discussion of an era are represented. And that was something I wanted to investigate. A bit goes back to this romantic thought of a young boy to wonder, how are we living together? Why is there hatred in the world? Why do we battle each other? How can we improve living together? But now I seek the answers in the way we deal with technology, and how technology constitutes non-human actors that are agents of change as well. And by looking at data, I found an entity that is such a non-human actor that is changing right now our way of shaping society, constituting the big narratives of our time and so forth. I do not believe in the hype that technology is changing our social problems. And that is something I already investigated in my PhD research when I tried to tackle the promise of participation through new media. And currently we see the promise that big data will change our social life world, solve our problems, and improve all our lives for the better. But I have, of course, a doubt that that will ever happen. And so I think when looking at technology, I do not invest trust in the designers and the engineers and the promoters of the new technology. I actually hope in a very traditional way that society at large will tackle these problems in society-wide debates, in regulation, and in political consensus. We often praise ourselves for being very integer, and just because we're politically on the right, meaning the left side. And I think that's something we can learn a lot from our colleagues in sociology and the sciences, to be more critical against ourselves and do not cut any corners. The moment I noticed that students had a need in learning about data visualization or data analysis, I had to admit I do not have the resources. I do not even have the knowledge to address it. The only thing I can do is standing at the sidelines and commenting on something. And actually I would notice I do not know anything about it. So what we did was turning that disadvantage structurally into an advantage in saying we have to learn it, we have to go into the field. And that was by founding the Utrecht Data School together with students, that I noticed we have to go to people who actually work with data, who are affected by the narrative of big data, and find the modus operandi in working with them. We do that through commissioned research projects, which has the great benefit that someone is also paying for the research we're doing, and I'm quite independent within the academy in what I'm doing. But it is also, on the one hand, it is helping others to tackle their questions about data while we educate ourselves about data practices. And on the other, it is an anthropological vehicle to immerse into a discourse that is severely affected by these changes and transformations at the time. And to sit in a boardroom, in an expert meeting, in a room where data scientists are working with data, and to look over their shoulders or engage actively in the discussion and shape the future of our society while recording it, documenting it, and analyzing it. So in terms of method, I think something significantly is changing here in the digital humanities. For the first time, we do not only have the chance to get involved, actually, yes, in an activist way, and you could compare it to the '68 generation that said we have to do something social, or go even back to Lazarsfeld, who went to Marienthal with his entire team and set up institutions of helping the unemployed, trying to improve their lifestyles. But I would say I'm not necessarily on the activist angle of politics. I'm active in shaping data practices and reflecting data practices. This is the difference. But I wanted to get away from this commenting from the sidelines and jumping into the middle. And I think that is the call nowadays for humanities scholars. Not being, I actually like to compare it with the old man in the Asterix comic books. The old man in front of the village, they're sitting there. They say something nasty or something accurate, but they're sitting there on their chairs and have just a comment. And now we have the chance to get involved and become active agents of change, not only observers. And that is the change, and that is the method. To answer the question, who am I in the university, in the digital humanities? I would answer, I'm many. I'm an educator, I'm a pioneer, I'm a teacher, I'm a student, I'm a generalist, I'm a specialist. It also depends on the context where I operate at the time. So I wouldn't claim one label for myself, and I like all of these various positions. I love being a student. I like learning new things every day, and I especially prefer learning together with my own students. But I have to change these roles, and that's sometimes it is really difficult. In building the data school, which I did basically without any institutional backing, I noticed that I had just to go out and get things done. There were people who expected a paycheck at the end of the month. I had to hire staff that would do the teaching that I couldn't provide because I was not trained well enough in data analysis. So I needed to hire people who had more knowledge than I had, which is already something shocking for a scholar to see that, oh my God, I have quite some shortcomings here and I have to compensate. And I trained myself in something that the German philosopher Odo Marquardt calls incompetence compensation competence. And so I also became an entrepreneur. I had to think about how much projects do I have to acquire to get the bills done at the end of the month, and can I put some money aside for projects I really like and that would not bring that much profits, and so forth. I'm also an agent of change, as the Utrecht Data School increasingly is hired as an expert council. We do consulting within public administration, for companies, for NGOs, and are called in with our expertise. And then again, there's a lack of institutional backing, because I have to think by myself about this role. I'm not a neutral scholar going out there. I have maybe an agenda, but no one is going to hold me accountable for it right now, but I want to hold myself accountable to it. So I have to think about ways to see whether I'm an honest broker of knowledge, or whether I try to push a certain agenda, or whether I'm just presenting selectively facts of which I think this is actually informing in the right direction, and I leave out the other stuff, and so forth. And there you can see how often you actually switch roles, and it's really difficult to provide a way of transparency for yourself in it. And it's even more difficult to provide this transparency to your readers and your audiences. Looking at the future of what we do in humanities, I see the computational turn as a paramount change. Not that we will have totally new topics within the humanities. We will still have literature studies, ancient languages, and so forth. But the way to do research is changing, because we have corpora that are digitized, we have new ways of searching them, we have new ways of seeing the context they're established in or they're migrating to. So I think that every humanities scholar is challenged to reconsider her research questions in view of these events. But next to that, we have pressing issues such as the globalization, which includes migration and the planetary age. We are not in national entities trapped anymore. We see that currently in the refugee crisis. And then again, we see something that addresses the calling orientation of most humanities scholars. We are not here predominantly to make a great career or to get our job done. We very often have a vocation. We want to add something to make the world a better place, as redundant as this sounds. And thinking back at my early childhood, when I recognized the horrors that have been taking place in Germany and have been imposed through Germany on others. And I thought, in growing up, that civilization is of course something that is very thin and has to be guarded and defended and protected. And now we experience how thin it is when we see how people on the social media utter their disgust about the refugees, and you think that wouldn't be possible, but it was always possible, but it was just not that visible. And then I see the need for keeping this humanity alive. And that's something humanities scholars can contribute to. And I think more so with the new means we have. Not that I trust the technology, but I trust us in using it properly. How would I call what we are doing? I'm not too happy with new media, because there was a time when the printing press was a new medium, and it was very disruptive for society and changed a lot. Now I look at the World Wide Web and I think, yes, the Pope had a website in 1995. But yet our politicians act as if the web was invented yesterday. In a way, it is very new. We live with something that Adorno called die Gleichzeitigkeit des Ungleichzeitigen, that we have people that live in the past while others are moving on. And the transformation is difficult for many. So if I look at the denominator where I see my work, it is internet and society. Actually, I see myself more oriented towards the social studies than merely to the hermeneutic aspects of media. And I do not want to read the world as if it was a book or a film or a theater play for that matter. So yes, I see what we are doing placed on the intersection with social sciences, and we are looking with different methods. We're not using the kind of models, we are not using SPSS, and if we would use it, we would question it. We would think what is actually behind the interface. What are the statistical routines that are implemented into it, hardwired into it in a way. And with these methods, with our tool set, we do research about social interaction and cultural production. I would like to say what actually drives me in what I do, and that's predominantly three things. For one, it is the pioneering, doing something no one else has done. I loved that when I was a student and was setting up the first festival for digital culture in Vienna. And as a student, the first student-run festival for digital culture in Vienna. And I love that when embarking on studies of a new technology within a very new field. And now pioneering the Utrecht Data School, finding very new ways of operating as a humanities scholars is something that makes a lot of fun. Although you have the innovator's dilemma, some people will walk away with the harvest of what we did. But I like that together with my students, we're walking we're making this path, we're paving the way. The second thing that I find very important is being involved in the field of transformation, being not on the sidelines, but working with people from society, with institutions, say municipalities, people from NGOs, people in public administration or the security sector. And to see that you have many sharp-minded people there who watch very critically towards the changes we're facing, and that you find allies there, so that there is possibility to change something. And lastly, to see my students grow into something they did not expect or always wanted to be, and see that we can create opportunities for them to embark on really exciting careers or find their own identity and voice.